Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. Later in the show, we run you through some free agents. This week's podcast, we're going to be talking about safeties and some of the safeties the Dolphins could target in free agency. And after that, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. But let's start with all the Dolphins news you need to know about. This first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors, like all of these news stories come from Pro Football Rumors, and it's about Tua Tagovailoa. Now, I don't know if we read this on last week's podcast, but we're going to read it again because it is interesting. So again, this is about Tua. The Dolphins' interest in the southpaw passer has not exactly been a secret, and even though Miami's number 5 pick may not be enough to land Tagovailoa, the team is prepared to trade higher into the top 5 if necessary, to land whichever prospect it prefers. If it were up to the Tagovailoa family, they would, quote, love for the Dolphins to trade up with the Lions and make their pick. So, it's just a quick, update to things. There's a lot of things there that the Dolphins are... And I think this is pretty much confirmed with some of the stuff we're going to talk about, some other news stories that are linked to this, that the Dolphins, and we've known this for 2 years now, that the Dolphins like Tagovailoa a lot. And I don't think they're going to be, and again, whether you think, the coaches obviously weren't tanking, but the front office had, and the owner, made a commitment to starting over. Let's just put it that way. I'm not going to call it tanking. They uprooted pretty much everything to start over. And it was, part of that was to get a franchise quarterback. And Tagovailoa obviously is that franchise quarterback for this organization. So it doesn't surprise me that the Dolphins, and they've said this in press conferences, and Chris Greer has said that we have more than enough to trade up if we have to. Now, he's not specifying which player, but I think if you take all of the, let's call it evidence together, and you use your brain, I think it's pretty clear. Now, this is not, I love to. I think I would love for the Dolphins to draft, and I know some of you for some reason don't, which I think you're crazy. But, because this team desperately needs a franchise quarterback. But it's all in the stars, just put it that way. I mean, so it's going to be interesting to see how things play out on draft day, because nothing's a lock, but clearly the Dolphins have interest in Tua, and I think they're going to get, I think it's going to get even more strong after we get some more stuff on the medical side of things with his hip and stuff of that nature, but it is pretty clear that the Dolphins do have a strong connection to Tua, kind of like what the Bills had with Josh Allen before the draft. So, sorry guys. Whew. I was yelling a lot last night watching the Super Bowl. But, so yeah. And it's cool that, obviously Tua probably wants to play for Miami rather than Detroit, which is no surprise to anybody. So I thought, if you're a Tua fan, this is, good news for you. If you're not, I guess it's bad news. I don't understand why. I will say this before we move on, because neither side is right. You can have strong convictions about certain things, but we don't know how Tua is going to turn out. But to say he's going to be bad is just a little presumptuous to say stuff like that. I think you got to look at the talent and some of the things he was able to accomplish in college football, which is very impressive. He dominated the SEC. The only flag is injuries, and that's what other people bring up, but I don't have that concern due to the fact that you look at, people bring up Adrian Peterson, who had a ton of injuries in college, and he's a running back, for God's sakes, and he only had that problem once. He tore his ACL, came back, rushed for 2,000 yards. Deshaun Watson had 2 ACL tears in his career before he made it to the NFL, and obviously he had the one ACL tear in the NFL, but he's been able to come back just as strong. So, and Tom Brady had an ACL tear, he came back just as strong. Albert Wilson took him a while after his hip injury, and he had, his position requires a lot more athleticism, obviously, and, he's starting to kind of come back, right? So, I think a lot of this is overblown, in my opinion, because you could point to, just like, I think you could point, especially in today's game, you can point to more superstars and high profile players getting injured and coming back stronger than you can the other way around. Like, it's very rare nowadays that you could point to a career, well, if he didn't have that injury, it's usually in the 90s, 80s, early 2000s where you can do this, some of that stuff. Well, if he didn't have this, happen to him, or that happened to him, maybe he would have been this. That really, it doesn't happen anymore. I mean, the closest thing we've had to that is RG3, who, for other reasons, didn't really succeed with the whole ownership issues and them having to change the scheme because of that and stuff like that. So that had nothing. It had a lot more to do with that than it did with the some of the hits he sustained his rookie season, and he came back the next year. So, and he didn't have to miss any time. So yeah, I mean, I think you could go either way with it. Neither side is right, but I think it is a little crazy to just, Tua's gonna suck because he's hurt. I don't think that's gonna be the case, in my opinion, at least. I'm gonna stay on the Tua train until the draft comes around, and because I really do believe he's gonna be a great quarterback. So so let's move on from that. So again, if you're a Tua fan, that news story's great for you. If you're not, you're like, oh god, you're not really that, I guess, sold on it. This next news story is a great for all Dolphins fans, because I think we all want this to happen. This comes from Pro Football Rumors. Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to play in 2020. He has confirmed it. Again, this comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick says he's going to play in 2020. All signs have been pointing in the direction, and now it's confirmed, straight from the veteran himself. The Dolphins haven't been shy about their desire to have Fitzpatrick back for another year, even as they plan to draft their quarterback of the future. Fitzmagic 37 would be the ideal mentor for whoever the Dolphins choose in April, and it's clear that he still has some tricks up his short sleeve. In 2019, Fitzpatrick was a bright spot for the Fins in an otherwise trying year. He racked up almost 4,000 yards with 20 touchdowns against 13 interceptions, and helped cap off the year in style with wins over the Cincinnati Bengals at home and the New England Patriots on the road. Fitzpatrick is under contract for 2020 at an $8 million salary for this upcoming year. Even though he could wind up being a QB2 by the midway point of the year, the Dolphins can't afford it thanks to their ample cap room. So yeah, I mean, we're all happy about this. We all wanted Fitzpatrick to come back this year, and I don't think there was one Dolphin. I mean, he played him, like I've said this a million times. I think we've talked about this a million times on this show. But he had, in my opinion, the best year of his career in terms of what he did for that team. I mean, he really never, and I said this before, he's never really carried a team. And this year he did. He carried a team that you could make an argument that could have gotten to 7 or 8 wins with this roster, which is insane. So, in my opinion, he's played his way until coming back for the Dolphins this upcoming season. He's playing his best football of his career. He has, a great ability to utilize some of the weapons on this team because he's so good at getting the ball out quick. And, this is not something Fitzmagic has been known for, but he made a lot of good decisions last year. You could see it in the way he plays the game. He got the ball out when he had to, as quickly as he could, with, a poor offensive line. I think he handled that perfectly. And he was able to elevate the some of the shortcomings around him. And I think that's, like I said, more than enough of a reason for him to come back next year, not only to play and make this team more competitive, but to mentor a young quarterback into becoming something even more special. So this is great news. This is great news for all of us Dolphins fans. And like I said, he is playing the best football of his career. He's a vet in this league. There's not a defense in this world he hasn't seen, and he was able to elevate a very poor offensive line. And we saw the difference between a younger quarterback behind that offensive line and a veteran quarterback who's savvy, who's got a great ability to make plays when things aren't there. How much different the offense ran with those two quarterbacks, and how much more fluid and fast and smooth we were able to execute with Fitzpatrick under center. So I'm very excited about that, and hopefully this team gets better. Significantly better, because it's not hard to get significantly better when you're starting from ground zero. I mean, you're starting from nothing really, and I'm not going to say this team has expectations, because I don't think it does. Maybe some other people will say that, but we do have a lot of confidence in his coaching staff, and hopefully they can continue that trend with a better roster, and it's going to be exciting to see what they do with a better roster. All right, so this next news story is a crazy one, which is interesting. It's just a crazy one. This again is coming from Pro Football Rumors. Latest on the Tom Brady situation connecting to the Miami Dolphins. Tom Brady sparked a frenzy earlier this week when he posted a cryptic photo of himself to Twitter. Although Adam Schefter of ESPN soon clarified in a tweet that it wasn't a statement on his impending free agency, that didn't stop the rumor mill from churning. The potential new team for the Dolphins, or not for the Dolphins, for Brady that continues to get the most buzz is the Dolphins, according to Mike Florio of ProFootballTalk.com. Sorry, guys. While Brady going to a team that was in a full-blown rebuild this past season wasn't something anybody expected, there are at least some connections. Dolphins head coach Brian Flores spent 15 seasons with Brady in New England, and there are other ex-Patriots on the staff. Florio also highlights the presence of Dolphins owner Stephen Ross, business partner Bruce Beal. Florio writes that there has been talk of Beal buying the team and then selling a silver of it to Brady, one league source told Florio. Okay, so there's like really two parts to this that, is interesting. The second part let's start with the second part because I don't care about the second part. The whole him buying the Dolphins, and that's part of the deal, him going to Miami, is the most crazy, stupid thing I've ever heard in my life. So that was pretty much washed away when Stephen Ross literally responded to this and said, "I will own the team until I die." So that's a bunch of nonsense. But the whole thing, the first part of this is nonsense too. Tom Brady to the Dolphins is nonsense. If the Dolphins wanted Tom Brady, Chad O'Shea would still be on their roster, because he would be literally going into the same offense he ran with Josh McDaniels. If they really wanted to convince him to go to Miami, Ryan Fitzpatrick wouldn't still be here. Maybe you keep him to cover his bases, but Ryan Fitzpatrick is a smart player who's dealt with organizations over many years, would not, tolerate this because he wants to play next year. That's the only reason he's coming back next year. He's made that clear. And for him to come back to back up Tom Brady, I don't think is something that he would want to do. So I think those two things tell you right away that there's no way Tom Brady's going to be a Dolphin. The fact that Shane Gailey's here now, Chad O'Shea's gone, that Fitzpatrick's coming back and the organization has made it well known that they want him back, I think all of those things point to Tom Brady not suiting up in a Dolphins uniform. And those are all factual things. That's not speculation. Those are all things that happen. I'm just saying those things wouldn't have happened if the Dolphins wanted TB12. So, and, if Tom Brady was a Dolphin, would it be a good idea? Probably not. Probably not. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think any Dolphins fan wants Tom Brady to be a Dolphin. Just for argument's sake, before we move on to the next news story, if the Dolphins were to get Tom Brady, they would have to spend a lot of money in free agency. I think it would be very interesting in a different world where how the older organizations with Stephen Ross ran, where free agency was such a big deal in team building, because Stephen Ross was a win now mentality, and it hasn't worked, and that's why we're trying this, instead of the things that we've tried in the past. It would be really cool to see. I mean, it would be interesting. It would definitely be entertaining to see if Tom Brady did come here and how that would attract other players to Miami. I think it would, and I think it would be interesting to see how this roster would look with us going on a completely crazy, money spending spree to compete for championships, because that's what you would have to do. If you're smart, I mean, you can't have Tom Brady with this roster, this roster right now. It just doesn't fit his play style. But it would be interesting. If you want to win, hey, we want to win a title. We're going to try to, win a title now. Let's spend all this money in free agency. Hopefully, the fact that Tom Brady's coming to Miami attracts enough people here, so that we could be more competitive and stuff like that. It would be interesting to see that play out. I'm sure even all the New England free agents would be a part of that, following Tom here. Who knows how many offensive linemen we'd have signed, how many, the weapons are already here in terms of receivers and tight ends. or tight end, I should say. So, and the running back situation would have to be figured out. But it would be interesting, to say the least, to see Tom Brady in a Dolphins uniform with that win now mentality that the organization used to have, just recklessly spending money in free agency, just to see if you could win a title in the next 2 years. It would be very, very, very interesting. It would either end up like what the Brooklyn Nets did in the NBA, if you're familiar with that situation, where they traded a lot of assets for older players like Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett. Or it would be like the Miami Heat situation, where they got LeBron, Bosh, and Wade together, and obviously they won, 2-3 championships. So it could go either way in that situation. But I don't think that's the right move. But it would be entertaining, to say the least, to see that play out. It would make these shows very interesting, and how to build speculating in how you would build a very competitive roster around a 44-year-old quarterback. That does still play at a pretty high level, in my opinion. But in all reality and realisticness, I think if you look at the facts about all of those things that we pointed out, the Jane Gailey, the Fitzpatrick situation, the comments on Tua Tagovailoa from the organization, there's no way Tom Brady's going to be a Dolphin. A news story came out that the Robert Kraft is completely willing to pay Tom Brady a ridiculous amount of money if he has to stay in New England. I think you're going to see 12 in a new Patriots uniform again, which is unfortunate, because I don't want to, let's see what they can do without him. I'd be more than happy to see that. Yeah, it's just, it's interesting. I'm sure I would love to. I don't know where you guys stand on this. I'm sure there are crazy, that maybe you think that the Dolphins, because to be honest with you guys, if you told me right now, it doesn't matter. If Super Bowl is a Super Bowl. Do you know what I'm saying? It's so hard to get there and win it, that if you think you have a shot at it, similar, and it's not even really that similar to the Peyton Manning. I guess it's sort of similar to that, to when Peyton went to the Broncos, and then you go all in. But if you think you can do it, hey, you take your shot. In my opinion, that's what you got to do. You got to take your shot, because you never, you just never know. And if this gives you a great shot to get there, and to be honest with you, this team has a lot of weapons on it, especially in the passing game, that if you fix this offensive line, this offense is going to be... It was already a top 10 passing offense without a good offensive line the last 2 months of the season. It could be special if you get an offensive line. And if you put someone like Tom behind that offensive line, it could be very dangerous. So, in an interesting scenario, I hope the Dolphins wouldn't do that. I do want to go down the rebuild mode and draft a younger quarterback, because it would be another 20 minutes for me to sit here and talk about how this wouldn't work if Tom Brady came to Miami, but I think those for those reasons are obvious. So let's move on. I think we all hope that's not going to happen. And again, I think it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. This next news story is something we're going to run through really quickly. Dolphins owner this comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins owner Stephen Ross expresses concern over Tua's hip. There's been a lot of buzz about former Alabama quarterback Tua Tagovailoa going to the Dolphins in the draft. We heard recently that the Southpaw's family wanted Miami to nab him, and there's been a connection there for a while. Tagovailoa is obviously dealing with a serious hip injury, and it's clearly a concern for the Dolphins. Miami's owner Stephen Ross spoke to reporters earlier today and said he's a great player. I just worry about his health. This would seem to indicate Tagovailoa going to the Fins is far from a done deal. We heard a couple of weeks ago that Miami wanted Joe Burrow and that they were willing to trade up to get him. Of course, this all could be gamesmanship for Ross to throw other teams off the scent. Despite the injury, Tagovailoa will reportedly throw for scouts in a private workout at some point during the draft, before the draft. The workout will go a long way toward determining where he goes in the draft. There's not a chance on God's green earth that he's not going to go top 5. Whether it's going to be us or someone else trading up to get him. I will say that right now. And I hope it's us. Let's just put it that way. But again, there's another news story. Most of that was speculation. But Stephen Ross did say that about he does have concerns for that hip. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Frank Gore wants to return for his 16th season. How does this relate to the Dolphins? Well, let's get into that. Frank Gore has authored one of the most one of the more remarkable careers in modern NFL history. And the player who sits third on the league's all-time rushing list is still not ready to retire. The 36-year-old running back is once again a free agent after this one-year Bills deal led to a playoff appearance. Rather than pause and exploring his next opportunity to consider retirement, Gore will explore his options on the market. Frank Gore said, quote, "I want to play. I feel I showed people I can still play, and when I got my opportunities, I'm still just seeing if teams want me." Gore reached a one-year agreement with the Dolphins and Bills in 2018 and 2019, respectively, although the rebuilding Dolphins moved on for him. Gore said he would welcome a return to his native city of Miami for the 2020 season. Gore will turn 37 in May. Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a good idea. If you look at the roster right now, running backs, we don't have a running back. Literally. I mean, we don't have really any running back. I mean, Patrick Laird is the only one that I would... Myles Gaskin ran hard towards the end of the season, but, I mean, nobody's sold on Myles Gaskin. Patrick is a great receiving... I shouldn't say great, but he showed himself to be a very capable, receiving back, but not a great running back, and far from even being a good running back for that matter. So you draft a young guy, you bring in Frank Gore to mentor him on a young team. I think that's a good idea. So I would definitely welcome that if that were to happen again, for sure. Okay. This last news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Jakeem Grant will be ready for OTAs. Dolphins wide receiver Jakeem Grant will be healthy for OTAs, as Barry Jackson of the Miami Herald writes. The dynamic returner was shut down in November with an ankle injury, but he'll be good to go for the first year of his 4-year extension that could pay him upwards of $24 million. So yeah, I don't know why I kind of paused there for a second. Yeah, we're all happy for Jakeem to come back. I think he brings a lot of spice to the punt and kick game. I would love just to see a solid year from him, a healthy season from him. I would like to see, especially on punts, less turnovers from him, and just more consistency in the passing game. I think that's all. Just consistency, I think, is the thing I can ask for from Jakeem. I will say this about Jakeem Grant. All of the years, for whatever reason, that he's been here, and especially, I'll say the last 2 years, not last year, but the year before that, Tannehill's last year especially, he was missed a lot in the passing game. And I'm not talking about him missing game. I'm talking about he was literally missed a lot. You bring back, this was the first year off of Tannehill's ACL tear, and he hadn't played football since 2016, and this was in 2018. And he missed them a lot in that game. There was a lot of games that Jakeem was just straight up missed in the passing game, and hopefully with better quarterback play and a more of a consistent presence from him, he can kind of have a renaissance to his career, because I just feel like it's been a very up and down career so far for him. We've seen explosions. We've seen really down moments from him. From the touchdown he caught from Jay Cutler on Monday Night Football against the Patriots, to the Cincinnati Bengals punt return, to the Titans kick return, to him muffing punt, all that stuff. I mean, it's been up and down his entire career. We just want more consistency from him. We know he possesses the talent to be a great player. Maybe he's never going to be a great detailed receiver like a Wes Welker, who also came from Texas Tech, like a Danny Amendola that came from Texas Tech. But he's an explosive player that just needs to be more consistent at his position, and hopefully we get that from him in the foreseeable future. So yeah, I mean, we covered a lot of topics, ladies and gentlemen, but it's time to go into free agency and discuss free agents. And again, excuse me. I'm sneezing over here. I don't know what I'm saying. Anyway, back to what I was saying. Each and every single week, we run you through a specific positional group in free agency. This week, we're going to be doing safeties. Last week, we did corners. And I think I said defensive backs, but I meant cornerbacks. So this week, we're doing safeties, ladies and gentlemen. Now, before we get into discussing specific players, should the Dolphins go after the safety position? Where do I stand on this? Yes, the Dolphins do need a true free safety. Bobby McCain, in my opinion, is not only is he inconsistent, but he just doesn't fit. I mean, in theory, he fits what the Dolphins want at safety. A very versatile player, who can play a lot of cover one coverage because of his defensive background. He can match up one-on-one if you play a cover one or cover zero defense, which this defense likes to do a lot. So, in theory, he fits the position and what we require from that position. I just don't think I don't think he can stay healthy for a 16-game season doing this, and I don't think he's the greatest tackler in the open field in the world. And for those reasons, I would just like to get a pure free safety who's played the position for most of his life. So I do think the Dolphins, now, this is like 4th or 5th on the list of things that the Dolphins need, but it is a need. And that's the first time really since, I guess, tight ends, we kind of need a second tight end, but we don't need a high price free agent. We just need someone to come in and kind of do some of the dirty work. But this is someone who would start on our defense every single down. And this is something that the Dolphins need, in my opinion. So, again, I think this is probably pretty much the first time. I mean, corners we discussed about, but I think Nick Needham can kind of hold the number 2 spot there. So again, this is probably the first position we've discussed that is actually a pretty big need for the Dolphins, at least in my opinion. So, and again, before we get to specific players, what are the Dolphins looking, in my opinion, what are the Dolphins looking for? What do they need in a free safety? So like I just said, they play a lot of cover 1 and cover 0 coverage. Now, a free safety usually isn't the robber in a cover 1, which means he just takes pretty much like the middle of the field if there's any deep crosses or anything like that. They're the robber. They sit in front of that. So they pretty much safeguard the middle of the field in case something cracks open. And usually you need a very instinctual and really athletic safety to do that. And I think, is Eric Rowe a great, the perfect cover 1 robber safety would be someone like Rashad Jones, who's just got great athletic ability, great hands, great playmaking ability, someone like that. Now, we don't know if Rashad's coming back or not, so yeah, I don't think Eric Rowe necessarily fits that. I think Eric Rowe fits more of the free safety mold. But both safeties in this defense, to me, can be a free safety or a strong safety. But they both have to be versatile enough to play that robber defense. Or, if you play a cover 0 defense, they're going to be matched up with someone one-on-one. And even in a cover 1 defense, sometimes they're going to be, especially if you double team someone. So, a lot of the times, and especially in this defense, the safeties have to be super versatile. They have to be able to pretty much that's why Eric Rowe was such a good, when he made the transition to safety and he was able to follow tight ends around one-on-one and man-to-man defense, that's why he was so good at it, because he has that defensive background. And that's why we really switched Bobby McCain to free safety, is because he had that background. If Minkah Fitzpatrick stayed in this defense, he would have been amazing, and it's unfortunate that we let a piece like that go. But I digress. We're getting into the weeds here. The point is the Dolphins need a versatile player to play that position. They need someone who's good at man coverage, because we play cover 1, cover 0. Not cover 0, but we do play a lot of cover 0 defenses on 3rd down. We didn't do it a lot last year, because every time we did do it, we let up a huge play because we just really didn't have the greatest personnel for it. But that, if you look at what B-Flow did in New England, every 3rd down, they were in cover 0. And we did that sometimes, a little bit, not as often as he did in New England. But we played a lot of cover 1. I think we played cover 1 and 2 deep man-to-man 95% of the snaps, or something crazy like that. We were 3rd or 2nd in the league, only behind New England and Detroit. What do both of those teams have in common with us? You know what I'm saying. So, obviously, I don't know why I have to say it, because you guys get it, but Matt Patricia obviously coaches Detroit, and then, obviously, Bill Belichick in New England. So, again, I don't know why I'm repeating myself again, but that's what the Dolphins are looking for in a safety, is someone who can do that, who's versatile enough to pretty much act like a defensive back at times, who can be versatile enough to take, a back, whether it's a back, a slot receiver, a tight end in the slot, whatever it is, they have to be able to, and again, that's why Eric Rowe made such a good transition to that position. So really, you're kind of looking for a lot of defensive back qualities in the safety in this defense. And me talking about what defenses we play and the responsibilities for that. I mean, if you think about it, Minka, again, and I don't want to sit here forever, but Minka would have been so good in that role. And it's unfortunate that we had to let him go. I would trade that first-round pick to get him back in a heartbeat. And like I said, guys, I was on that train before he left. I told you guys that he was going to... I told you he's a great player. And it sucks that, he can't stay in this defense. Because if you look at the end of the day, he left because we weren't trying to win, at least in his mind, right? And he didn't like the position he was playing. I mean, at the end of the day, we didn't do that much worse. You know what I'm saying? Both of us didn't make the playoffs, so... We won 5 games. We went 5-4 the last 2 months. The last 2 month and a half of the year. So anyway, I'm getting off track. Let's get into these safeties. So these safeties I have listed are my list. These are safeties that will be free agents. Some of these safeties I'm going to argue for. Some of these safeties I'm going to argue against. But remember the criteria that I just laid out. I only picked these safeties because I thought they could do some of the things that I listed what they have to be able to do. So some of these other safeties, like maybe like an Anthony Harris, who fit more of a traditional scheme, aren't on this list because I just don't think they fit the criteria for this defense. So keep that in mind as well. So the first safety that you know what? I don't know if we'll start with the older guy. We'll start with the older guys first. Okay, first up is Devin McCourty, who we discussed last week. So we're going to do this very briefly. Now, Devin McCourty had a career year at the age of 31. He's now 32. But, sorry, guys, my nose is all over the place. I don't want to do that to the mic because that's disgusting. But, all right. I'm sorry, guys. All right, so Devin McCourty. He had 5 interceptions. He had 2 forced fumbles. He had 58 tackles last year. He's 32 years old this year. So by the time the season starts, he's 32. He's going to he's going to be 33 after that year. So he's an older guy, but obviously he played in this defense for many years. He knows the ins and outs of it. Clearly he could play at a high level still because he got 5 picks last year. I think he brings a discipline and experience to this defense, especially to a young DB room that this team needs, and especially a great leader in that room. Because I feel like we don't, and I know that. Listen, I'm not in locker rooms. I hate when analysts say, "Oh, they need a great leader," but I'm basing this off of what other players say about how important it is to have a veteran presence in each room, each positional group's room. So if it is that important, then who better to have in your room than Devin McCourty, who's ran this defense for his entire career and has done it at a Pro Bowl level. So I think that helps the guys in the room. It has to. And plus B-Flow coached him for all of those years. And I think there's a natural fit there. It's like peanut butter and jelly. So I do like this. I think you can get him at a reasonable price. I don't think it's going to be insane money. And because of his age and, he's going into his 10th season or his 11th season. So yeah, I think the Dolphins should be a target on their radar if they were to go out in the free safety market. Now, I'm not saying this is a priority because every time I do one of these, people are like, "Oh, we need this and that." Yeah, I know, dude. We need offensive linemen first. I'm not being stupid. I'm saying that if we're breaking down each free agency positional group, but if the Dolphins were to go after a free safety, which they need, Devin McCourty would be one of the top ones on my list that the Dolphins should target. For those reasons, he ran this defense for many years. He plays at a high level in this defense for many years. He's coming off a career year with 5 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles, 58 tackles. He's great in coverage still. He's a super smart player. If you've ever watched, clearly you guys have watched Devin McCourty play. Great hands. And he could do all of the things that we want him to do. And he fits the criteria of a versatile safety in this defense. So Devin McCourty for sure would be a high-value player if the Dolphins were to target free safety. So staying on the older side of things, before we get into some of the younger players, next up, and again, these players have to fit the criteria, is Jimmy Ward, who actually surprised me how old he was. It's only his 6th year, and he's 29 years old, which it's just a little weird. So he's about a few years younger than Devin. But obviously Jimmy Ward played in the Seattle system this past year, which was mainly cover 3. Some man-to-man defense and some cover 2 defense, but mainly they play that cover 3 defense. That's where, Robert Saleh, came from Seattle, all that stuff. So he doesn't have a lot of experience in this defense, but I think he fits the criteria. He's a very athletic safety. He's a bigger safety. He's about 5'11". He's almost 6 feet tall. He's super athletic. Jimmy Ward is very athletic, and I think that really has to, in my opinion, fits what we need. He's a great athlete. He's played free safety his entire career. He's got great ball skills if you've ever seen Jimmy Ward play. He had an injury in terms of his stats this past season. He had 1 sack, 0 forced fumbles, 0 interceptions, but 65 tackles. He had an injury riddle 2019. He played 13 games, but he was dealing with some injuries that entire season. So, maybe not the production you want to see from the interception side of things, but he's still, in my opinion, if you've watched him play, he covers a lot of ground at safety. He's like I said, he's athletic enough to do some of those things and some of the defenses that we require him to do, and he has to be great in coverage, and that's what I'm saying. He's a good coverage safety, so he fits the criteria there, and being a versatile player, and he's a great tackler. He's a great tackler in the open field. So, and he hits hard, especially for a free safety nowadays. So, I like Jimmy Ward a lot. I think his ball production isn't great. If you look at his career, he's only had 2 interceptions in 6 seasons. So you're like, all right, maybe not the greatest ball skills in the world, but I feel like he's just really starting to come into his own as a really good safety in this league. And again, he dealt with some injuries. So Jimmy Ward, should the Dolphins go after him? Should the Dolphins not go after him? I'm going to say yes. He's 28 years old. He's an athletic safety. He fits, in my opinion, the criteria of being a versatile player who can do a lot of things in the box if you want him to, because he's a great tackler, and he's athletic enough to keep up with some of these faster tight ends, running backs, and even some slot corners or slot receivers, especially in this league. So I like Jimmy Ward a lot, and I think he can do some of those things that we ask him to do in this defense. So yes, I think he would be in my top 3 or 4 if I was going to rank the free safeties. So I'm going to say yes. Next up on my list is Adrian Phillips, who's a little bit older. He's a little younger. Obviously, Adrian Phillips in 2018 had a career year. He went to the Pro Bowl. He had 1 interception, 9 pass defense. He had a bunch of tackles. He had, he had 94 tackles in 2018, which was his career year. He started all 16 games. His follow-up year in 2019 wasn't so great. He had an injury-riddled season. He only played 7 games. He had 0 interceptions, 0 sacks, 0 forced fumbles. He had 36 tackles in 7 games. So here's what I'll say about Adrian Phillips. I don't think he fits the criteria. He does play a flex safety position, which I would say he does switch between free safety and strong safety a lot, similar to what we used to do with TJ McDonald and Rashad Jones. I just don't think he fits what the Dolphins want. He fits more of a cover 3 system. A box safety. He's more of a traditional safety than some of those other guys. I don't think he's versatile enough to play in this defense. Like, if we asked him to go one-on-one with a tight end, I don't think that's going to end very well for anybody. So he fits more of a zone-heavy defense, in my opinion, and less of a team that plays 95% of man coverage. I just don't think he fits that criteria. So I'm going to say no on Adrian Phillips. He had a great year 2018. They have Gus Bradley down there in LA now. They play that same Seattle defense. He's more of a Cam Chancellor than he is a Devin McCourty. Let's just put it that way. That's what I'm trying to say. So, I just don't think he fits the criteria. So I'm going to have to say no on Adrian Phillips. The next guy on our list, we only have 2 more to go, and these are some of the younger guys. The next guy we have on my list is Demarius Randall. Now, Demarius Randall is very similar to Bobby McCain. He played a lot of cornerback, in his career for the Packers when he was in Green Bay, and it's really crazy that he's played 2 years with the Browns. It doesn't seem right, but yes, he's played 2 seasons with the Cleveland Browns. In those 2 seasons, in 2018, he had 4 interceptions. The follow-up year, he had 0. How many games did he start? He's had some injuries as well. he hasn't played all 16 games for Cleveland. His second year in Cleveland, he played 11. It is first he played 15. So he basically the entire season his first year. But again, former cornerback in the NFL. When you watch, he fits the criteria because obviously he has a lot of versatility to his game. He was able to transition to safety early on in his career. He's still 27 years old. He's only in his 5th season in the league, so his ability to transition from corner to safety is pretty insane considering how young he is in the league. And he fits the criteria. He's a younger safety. He's not the greatest in terms of tackling. He's a smaller guy. He is 5'11", but he doesn't. You're not going to see a lot of big tackles from Demarius Randall is my point. But he does fit the criteria of we play 95% of man. He has a cornerback background, so he fits it there. So I like Demarius Randall. I think he fits the defense. I would put him lower than someone like a Jimmy Ward or a Devin McCourty because his tackling ability isn't just he's just not as good as those players at tackling the open field in my opinion. So he'd be a little bit lower on the list, but I would pass Demarius Randall. I would not be upset at all to see Demarius in a Dolphins uniform for those reasons, just because of his background at corner and his ability to be a versatile player. So this guy would be number 1 on my list. I think he's the best safety of free agency. I think he's one of the best safeties in the league, and I think he's going to command a lot of money. But I would love to see him in a Dolphins uniform. I think he would make an impact right away. I think he could be a Pro Bowler for many years for this organization. And I like and this next player I like a lot, and that's going to be Justin Simmons. I like Justin Simmons a lot. I like him a lot. I think he's the best, one of the best safeties in the league. Definitely probably only to Minka, the second best young safety in the NFL. And I like him a lot. He brings a lot of versatility. He's super athletic, so he fits the criteria there. He's 26 years old. He's 6'2", 202, and he plays free safety. He's a big safety. He makes an insane amount of tackles. In 2019, he had 93 tackles. That's way more than anybody else on this list. He had 4 interceptions this past year. In 2018, he had 3. In 2017, he had 2. He's been getting better each and every single year. He had 4 pass defense in 2018. In 2019, he had 15 pass defense. He had 15 pass defenses to his 4 the previous season. His combined tackles in 2019, he had 93. In 2018, he had 97, so a few more in 2018. In his entire career, back-to-back years, he's played all 16 games. His first 2 years in the league, he played 13, and that was only because he was a younger player sharing snaps with other people. So he's a super durable player. I mean, he's a big dude. He's 6'2", so he's really athletic. He's he's coming off of his rookie deal. So the Dolphins have an opportunity if I don't know how much they prioritize. And then again, I prioritize offensive and defensive lines ahead of free safety, but I think this would probably be 2 or 3 in terms of priority positions for this team. Because to me, this is a huge hole in this defense, and getting like someone like a Justin Simmons, who in my opinion is going to be a really good player. He's only 26 years old. He's got his entire prime ahead of him. We've all watched Justice. I mean, you remember the game we blew out the Broncos in Miami? He had that pick 6 against Jay Cutler. He's all over the field. He's great in coverage. For his size, he moves amazingly. Like he flies around the field. If you've ever seen Justin Simmons play, he's a great safety. He's a versatile safety. He fits this defense in terms of playing 95% man coverage. He fits that at 6'2", which is super rare. So for a big guy like that to be able to move like he does is very rare. And just for if you've seen like Tony Dungy rank his most improved players of last year on NBC, Justin Simmons was his number 1. He called him one of the best safeties in the league. If you want more, I guess, obviously for more of some more credibility there. So I like Justin Simmons a lot. I think he's the best free safety in this class, in this free agency class, and I think he's one of the best safeties in the NFL. Like I said, it's very rare to see someone at his size be as athletic as he is, and he's a great tackler. He's a physical player because of his size. He's got great ball skills. His 2 years starting in the league, 4 picks, 3 picks. Started all 16 games ever since he got the starting nod in the NFL the last 2 years. So He's super durable, doesn't miss games, really good at what he does, fits the criteria of this defense in terms of being versatile, and I think it would give this AFC East quarterback division a lot of headaches for many years if he was to become a Dolphin. I don't expect him to leave Denver because he is so talented, but I like him a lot. So if the Dolphins, if he suits up in a Miami uniform, I would be ecstatic. Again, very low on the priority list. I would say it's 3 or 4. But depending on how you prioritize things, I still think offensive and defensive lines are more of a priority here. But if you're looking for a durable player who you know is going to play all 16 games for you and play them at a high level and a position of need, then Justin Simmons is your guy. He fits the defensive criteria to a T. I like Justin Simmons a lot. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so that's my list. I'd love to see who you guys have on your free safety list. All those players, by the way, played free safety. In case you're wondering, I didn't put any strong safeties on there because most of them, I just don't feel that they fit the criteria of a versatile safety. But anyway, let's get into the fan Q&A, where we answer fans' questions. Hopefully we can get to them because I feel like I talked a little bit too long about the safeties, but it's an important position that the Dolphins, I feel like, need to fill. All right, so this first question comes from David. David asks, he says, I want to ask about this quarterback class. How does it compare to last year's or the year before? How about next year's? Quarterbacks are always overhyped. 4 came out in the top 10. When Rosen came out, none of them are great. Okay, so let me say something about this. This quarterback class is not hyped. It's just 2 players that are really good. You talk about Tua Tagovailoa, you talk about Joe Burrow. They've had very successful careers in the SEC, which is very difficult to do. Now, I don't care what school you play for. It's still difficult to do. Now, both of those players played with really good players around them. That's true, but I don't really care. I mean, most great quarterbacks do that come out of college. When you look at some of the other than like Patrick Mahomes, I would say most of them come out with great players around them. You think about Deshaun Watson's a perfect example of that. He's had a great NFL career and had nothing but great players surrounding him, like Mike Williams and DeAndre Hopkins when he was in college. So it is what it is. I'm trying to think. What was the thing? Oh, we're talking about the quarterback class. So your question is, I want to ask about this year's quarterback. How does it compare to last year's? How does it compare to last year's? We really thought last year's was. I think it was more deep last year. I think it was a deeper class because there were 4 guys or really 5 guys that you could see becoming something special. I mean, you had Lamar Jackson, you had Baker Mayfield, you had Josh Allen, who was the athletic freak from Wyoming. Josh Rosen, who was a little more of a controversial character from UCLA, but was talented nonetheless. I mean, there was a lot of talent there. So I would say last year's was deeper. Now we know more about that class. But at the time, I think it was a little bit more. There was a lot more talent. The talent pool was a little bit more deep than it is this year. I mean, Jordan Love, I guess, is the Josh Allen of this year's class. Other than that, Justin Herbert, I feel like is just. I don't really know what to think about Justin Herbert, to be honest with you. So I would say last year's was a deeper pull. If you remember, though, the year Patrick Mahomes came out, was that 2017? I can't remember. Anyway, the point is that people who killed that class and said that class was not going to be very good. They killed it. Remember when Deshaun Watson was coming out? It had nothing to do with his injuries. They were concerned about his turnovers. They were like, oh, he turned the ball over too much in college. Well, look what the heck he does in the NFL. It barely turns the ball over. Like, literally, barely turns the ball over. They thought Patrick Mahomes was a project more than he was could become something. And, that class was criminally underrated. I mean, Trubisky was the first one picked. People hated on that class. So my point is I don't know. This class could be great. Jordan Love could be great. Justin Herbert could be great, but you never know. Is my point, and you never know how things turn out. So if I had to answer your question, I would say last year's was a deeper class. This next question comes from a Hunter. Hunter asks, how much money would you pay for players? How much money would you pay for players? Average player, star player, superstar player. Average player? I don't know. I don't know how much you would pay an average player. Is that a starter in the league? If he is, then you pay him good money, I would say. Star player and superstar player, you would pay them a lot of money. I mean, depending on what the position is, like, man. I mean, if we're talking about, let's say a superstar offensive lineman, I would say he's around $10 to $11 million a year, maybe. I mean, George Kittle's 13, so maybe an offensive lineman is maybe 8 to 9, somewhere around there. I don't know what I would be willing to pay. I would have to look at the market, what other players have gone for, so I can't really answer that question. I would have to do a little bit more research on just the market of the offensive line and stuff of that nature. This next question comes from Justin. Justin says, who's the most unique 2020 draft prospect in your opinion? Isaiah Simmons, and it's not even close. He has like the size of Cam Chancellor, but he's way more athletic and can do a lot of different things. So I would say Isaiah Simmons. I think he's probably the most underrated prospect in this year's class. He was super consistent in all the games he played. I think he was more consistent than like a Fulton in LSU, who's a highly regarded corner. I think Isaiah Simmons, even it was his name, Okuda from Ohio State, I don't want to get his name wrong. I think he was even more consistent than him. Like any big games that he played in against really good talent, he showed up and played a really good game. So to me, that's huge brownie points. So I like Isaiah Simmons a lot. I think he's one of the most underrated prospect in this year's draft. This next question comes from Logan. By the way, Isaiah Simmons played like safety, middle linebacker, all the linebacker positions. He played some DB. Like he was insane. This next question comes from Logan. Logan says, how early are you willing to take a running back in this year's draft? I'm willing to trade it back up into the first round if I have to get J.K. Dobbins. Like, don't play around with me. I will get, if I can get him, I'm going to get him. He's a very talented player. I like J.K. Dobbins a lot. So I would say mid to late first round, early second round. This next question comes from Logan. This next question comes from Mark. He says, do you think Miami is interested in Tua and vice versa? Yes, I think it's pretty clear. This next question comes from Logan. Logan says, would it make more sense to stay at 5 for Tua? If we missed him, then 5, 18, 26 for O-line, and then draft Trevor next year. Not likely Tua plays anyway, or trade up a few spots for Tua and lose possible O-line help, and Tua still might be able to play. Listen, you have a ton of picks. You can get enough offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So you don't need to worry about using one of those picks on a top 5 player. You don't need to worry about that. The Dolphins have a record amount of picks, especially in this year's draft. They have 14, so 12 or 14. So they're fine on that. They don't need to worry about that. Take who you want at 5. I don't care what position it could be Isaiah Simmons. Like if you can't get Tua or Joe Burrow, it could be someone like that. Just pick the best player available. And then you can worry about the trenches later in the draft if you have to. But you don't have to be handcuffed to a certain position that early on, because of how many picks you have. This next question comes from Ethan. Ethan asks, hey, Skaggs, assuming Miami does trade up or down in the draft, what their likely first-round player would be absolute worst for us in the draft? Thanks so much for the show. Would be the absolute worst for us in the draft? I would say if they drafted a tackle, or if they drafted one in the top 5, I think there are so many talented players that you could potentially get there, that all the offensive linemen that are that high up, I just don't think are deserving of it, because I think the other players are so much better than them. So I would say if the Dolphins take a tackle in the top 5, I would be kind of disappointed. He says, thanks so much for the show. Thank you, Ethan. That means a lot. This next question comes from SM. SM asks, if Joe Burrow falls to 3, do we move up for him? Yes. Absolutely. I keep clicking off of this thing. I'm trying to get all these questions in because we're running out of time here. This next question comes from Troy. I don't know why I called you Tony. He says, which is more important to you? Fixing the offensive line, defensive line, cornerback, or running back positions? Are you getting the quarterback, then fix the team guy, or fix the team, then find the quarterback? No. First of all, you guys got to calm down. You can get a quarterback, and I'm not giving them an excuse. They have too many picks to be like, oh, we took a quarterback this year. No, dude, you got the entire rest of the draft. You have 2 more first-rounders in this draft. You can get the other positions filled out, especially with between the money in free agency and all the draft picks. You can build out a roster with taking a quarterback. So to me, this analogy doesn't exist with the Dolphins this year because of all of the ammunition they have. They don't have that excuse because they can do both. So I'm going to say both on this one, Troy, because to me, they don't have that excuse. This next question comes from SM. He says, give your 2020 Miami Dolphins a wide receiver depth chart. I mean, Jesus. Preston Williams, Devontae Parker. Isaiah Ford, Albert Wilson, Jakeem Grant. Dolphins should fix the offensive... okay, this next question comes from Richard. That last question was from SM, in case I forgot. This next question comes from Richard. Richard says, Dolphins should fix the offensive tackles and center and draft a difference maker at running back and give Rosen another chance. No, we're not doing that. I'm sorry, guys, but I'm not taking a quarterback in the top 5. I have to take one. There's no way I'm not taking one. This next question comes from D-Mac. He says, do you think the Dolphins should sign Tooney? I think his name's I can't remember. Or Andrews Pete from the Saints this offseason. I'm going with Tooney. Because Andrews Pete is a great player. And I think he's a better player than Tooney, or however you say his name. But I think Tooney is more durable than he is. So I'm going to go with Tooney because of that. Because I just think he's a good player. And he doesn't miss games. So I'm going with that. I'm going with the guard who doesn't miss games. Who's still a good player. This next question comes from Hunter. He says, what do you think about Tua's dad saying the preferred destination is Miami? I was pretty stoked about that. This next question comes from Miami Sports Fan. He says, who's the better Marks brother? I'm going to go with Clayton. Clayton had better statistical years than Duper, and that's just a fact. So I'm going to go with Clayton. I think he was a better receiver. Clayton was a better deep threat. Or, not Clayton. Duper was a better deep threat than Clayton, but Clayton, I think, was the better all-around receiver. This next question comes from Nothing Faces O. He says, do you think the Bengals would take Josh Rosen and swap the first and 5 picks? And do you think that would be worth it for the Dolphins? What do you think? Yes. If they called me today, they said, hey, man, you want the number 1 overall pick for Josh? I'd be like, bro, when do you want him? And that's no disrespect to Josh. But, bro, you could do so many different things. If they gave me the number 1 pick, I would draft Josh. Or not draft Josh. I would take Joe or Tua. Don't make me decide that right now. And then I would trade all the way up back into the top 10 probably and take someone else. I would either get AJ, the guy from, what's his name? I can't remember his name, from Iowa, who I like a lot, by the way. Or I'd trade back up and get Okuda or Isaiah Simmons, CeeDee Lamb, which we don't need, so I wouldn't do that. Probably would take a tackle. Or, here's the thing, man. There are so many, you could sit back and get the tackle from Louisville, who I can't remember his name right now, but he's getting a lot of buzz right now. So there's a lot of different things you could do, especially if you have the first overall pick. You could do anything you want at that point. You could trade up and get even better players. So it would be real crazy if you had a deal cut, you could get Chase Young, and somehow, who picks at 2 or 3? The Lions or... and if you're just swapping the first and 5th for Josh Rosen, not only could you take Chase Young at 1, trade back up to 2 or 3, because you have so many draft picks. You could trade future picks if you have to, and then take your quarterback. So you could pull off a lot of different crazy things if you had the number 1 overall pick. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. That is all that there is to discuss on this week's podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope there was a lot of information that you didn't know. Probably not, but hey, we try here. And that is going to be it for this week's podcast. I can't wait to see you guys in the next one. It's heating up, ladies and gentlemen. Free agency is almost here. The draft is almost here, even though it's not almost here. Hopefully, I can't wait, man. I wish I had a time machine because I would hit that button right now just to fast forward to the draft, and I would stop at free agency. No, I would fast forward all of the draft and then read everything that happened in free agency. But anyway, that is going to be it for this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know. And I'm sorry that my dog's ruining this outro right now. They're stupid. They're pugs. They don't listen. They don't even know their names. Anyway, I'm Sky Oxygen 83. I will see you guys in the next one. My pugs are saying goodbye right now. Let me know what you think about the Brady situation and the Justin Simmons situation. How do you guys feel about Justin Simmons? And I will see you guys in the next one.